in between, you can figure out what time it is for you. Welcome to Education Table Talk, sponsored by MCH Strategic Data. And my name is Michael J. I'm the president of Educational Systemics and really proud to have MCH as our sponsor for this program. If you've not listened before, the goal of this program, actually I guess if you've listened before as well, the goal of the program is really to support those who are involved in the education industry, not necessarily practicing educators, although they're certainly welcome to listen in and participate, you know, in terms of the tweets, etc., but really for those who are involved in the education industry and for them to understand different topics that are relevant to K-12 education, pre-K through 12, early childhood, as that is the topic for this program. So our next show, just start out with this, and I'll say it again at the end, we're going to be skipping December, and we'll be on in January on I don't have the exact date here in front of me. I know I'll have that before the end of the show, but in January, talking about making assessment actionable. So do keep that in mind, and I'll give you a date to put in your calendar for that. So the topic today is near and dear to my heart. I mean, it's not an area that I've spent a tremendous amount in as an educator, although I mentioned on an earlier show that I just renewed my teaching credential, and I am actually credentialed to teach K through 12, but if you gave me a bunch of kindergartners, I'm not sure I would know what to do with that many young kids at the same time. But I really appreciate the professionalism and the hard work that's involved with working with young kids. It's been a long time since I've had little kids myself at home, and yet my wife and I don't tell everybody, we're mall walkers. So we walk in a local mall that we have, and I can tell you one of the delights of doing that is just seeing all the young children there and interacting with their parents. And it amazes, both my wife and I are educators by background, it's just amazing to see the character of different kinds of interactions that we see between parents and their children. Everything from very active engagement, things that we know are pedagogically healthy and kids being supported, to kids being dragged around by parents who are on the cell phone the whole time. And you know, the myriad of different kinds of parenting that we see take place is just amazing. And how do we provide support for those kids? How do we provide support for those parents? It's always top of mind for us as we're observing all of this take place. I was recently, our local school district, Bellingham, Washington School District, has these connections with the school board, and about a year ago had one around early childhood education. And one of the questions there is, how do we reach kids more and more? Now, our school superintendent, Dr. Greg Baker, pulled out of the budget found funds through savings and other places to actually provide all-day kindergarten for all children. At one point, you'd have to pay for that, and this is kindergarten, not preschool, but kindergarten. So he's very, very much committed to that. But the question is, how do we reach parents early? And the question that I asked is, why don't we show up as a school district at the hospital bed of that parent, assuming they actually have the baby in a hospital, and say, here's your gift from the school district. Here is your instruction manual. Here are the resources in your community. Here's how you can reach out and support that child, because so many parents are clueless about that. So today on this show, we've got some wonderful guests who are going to be talking about early childhood education, talking about the nature of that marketplace, how we're addressing the needs of young children, and in particular, are we really helping kids realize their potential as we start them out? It's such a critical component of their lives. So let's go ahead and introduce our guests. We have Jenifer Morack, who's program development at edweb.net. Jenifer, go ahead and say hi.
Hi, thank you, Michael, for having me here today. I started my career in early childhood. In college, I was a Head Start volunteer for 4 years, and have worked my way through teaching various grade levels and owning a consulting business. And now I've landed with edweb.net as a manager of program development. We provide free professional and social learning networks for educators, and I manage professional learning communities where we offer free webinars for teachers and the teachers who come to EdWeb to learn best practices and improve teaching and share resources. It's been a great experience.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jenifer, and thanks for being on this panel. Suzanne Thouvenelle, I had the pleasure to serve with you on a panel for NCH last month. Suzanne, say hi and give us a little bit about you.
Hi, I'm Suzanne, and I work with Head Start. I've been working with Head Start for many, many years. Right now, currently, I work with the Early Childhood Learning and Knowledge Center, which works to disseminate information from federally sponsored research projects and grants and development projects that focus on materials for teachers and parents, and the population is pregnant women and birth through 5 years old. Plus, there's a big focus on transitioning from preschool into the public schools and how we need to continue to support parents to be successful and effective in working with their children over the course of the remainder of their school careers.
Great. Thank you so much, Suzanne. And you're outside of D.C. You work in D.C., but you live in Virginia. Is that right?
Correct. My office is right across the street from the Washington Post, so we get the headlines like the one about Tom Harkin sponsoring the bill, and they have it on a little ticker outside the window so I can monitor what's going on downtown. And I ride my bike every day, and it was really cold today. It was 28 degrees, so I wish I were in San Diego.
That'll wake you up. So speaking of San Diego, Rita Palet, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, my name is Rita Palet, and I'm coming to you from San Diego in the San Diego County Office of Ed. And not to make Suzanne jealous, but it is 81 degrees here today, Suzanne. Sorry.
Yeah.
I currently provide professional development across San Diego for administrators running early education programs. And before that, I was a director for National School District for 13 years for early ed programs, running Head Start, state preschool, quality preschool initiative, as well as transitional K, and oversaw the collaboratives. And before that, I've taught other grade levels, and so now I've kind of stepped back in a resource role to provide different support, whether it's one-to-one coaching or group professional development sessions.
Well, that's wonderful. And Rita, I think, although all of our guests today certainly have their experience in the classroom and involved directly, I think you deal with it in a positive way. I don't mean that negative, but working actively with this community on an ongoing basis, really right down in the trenches. So really appreciate you being on the call and being available. I know you've got a good team there that you work with as well. So perfect. So let's go to our first segment after those introductions. That is time to play You Can't Handle the Truth. And so today we have, just as we have had in the past, 3 different stories, only one of which is true. And this is your chance to vote on which of these is actually true. So once we get done reading all of these from our guests, Jackie, who is our presentation goddess, is going to open up the poll, and then all of you who are listening in can actually go vote for which of the 3 of the stories you think is actually true. So let's go ahead and go through each one of these. The first one is called Babies and Bars. So let's go ahead. Who's reading Babies and Bars? Jenifer, you're reading Babies and Bars.
Okay. Well, let's see. Running a child care center can be incredibly challenging. Babies and toddlers demand a lot of attention. Carrie Dobbs, the owner of a child care center and mother of twin toddlers, saw a unique solution to the demands of her toddlers during an excursion to the park. As she watched her twin toddlers explore, Carrie saw them interact with a number of people. One woman in particular enjoyed the children's playfulness that seemed to free her from her otherwise worried demeanor. It turned out that she recently had been released from a low-security correctional facility. The woman shared that during her time, she had learned to address the problems that landed her there, but missed the opportunity to interact with the young ones. The light bulb went on. Young children crave attention, and these people miss contact with them. Carrie decided to put together a program in which low-security inmates have an opportunity to spend time with the children in the controlled environment of her daycare center. She still has to handle the dirty diapers, but spends time with the children, observing their interactions with the adults and teaching appropriate social skills. Mrs. Dobbs tells us, "I love all my kiddos, and I know that they are getting the attention they enjoy. This program has brought my center closer to the community, and others are looking to provide similar offerings." We wanted to interview a few of the other adults, but they were busy cooing and playing with their new young friends. The end.
I like that little. That was great, Jenifer. Thank you so much. That was Babies and Bars. That's jail bars, not liquor bars. So just making sure clear about that. So thank you so much for reading that, Jenifer. Suzanne, let's go to you next with the baby pacifier.
Okay. Well, we know that from time to time, organizations are looking for ways to impact the emotional and intellectual development of young children. And there's a nonprofit group in Canada that's teaching young learners about empathy. Now, we think, you know, empathy comes naturally, but actually, in today's media-rich environment, we are flooded with images in the news about a disaster. We have video games that portray violence, and it's very easy to sort of just become kind of anesthetized to those experiences and not really get emotionally overwrought or concerned about it, and we lose the opportunity to take another human being's perspective on what goes on in life, in the reality of the world. So this curriculum that they've designed introduces young children to babies and paying attention to babies and picking up on the nonverbal dynamics and the other kinds of hints that babies can give you about what they need and what they want. And we know that this emerging language on the part of infants doesn't allow them to express their needs in a way that we can really understand them through language. So they don't yet speak fluently. So the children are forming emotional attachments by observing infants and picking up on the nonverbal dynamics of the situation and becoming more empathetic with understanding what the needs are of young children and understanding the feelings of others. Teachers have been thrilled with the results in the children that have had these infants in their classrooms, and the only thing is the teachers say this is one assignment that children can't take home to work on.
Thank you so much for that, Suzanne. That's great. Baby pacifier, that's baby pacifier. Now we're going to go to Culture Club. For those of you who remember the musical group, this is not directly related, but we did riff off that name. So Jenifer, actually Rita, go ahead and read Culture Club to us, please.
Okay, I'm just going to read you the club. An elementary school in Central Florida found it particularly challenging to accommodate the cultural traditions of all the students entering their school. Principal Bond, with his staff and community on board, decided to divide the year into thirds, 1/3 for each of the 3 regions represented by the school's student body. Students study the traditions of the country in that region and represent those throughout their school day.
So, Rita, I'm going to go ahead and read the full version of this. I know it's sometimes confusing. That's the short version that we have up on the slide. So I'll read this really quickly. Thank you for doing that. An elementary school in Central Florida found it particularly challenging to accommodate the cultural traditions of all the students entering their school. The student population represents over 30 different countries with an even greater number of cultural traditions and languages. The school's principal, Jerome Bond, decided to embrace the rise of their multicultural student body. My staff and I realized that we were faced with a challenge that was also an opportunity, says Principal Bond. As we focused on math and language arts, our students were not getting a good education in social studies and the arts. With his staff and community on board, they decided to divide the year into thirds, 1/3 for each of the 3 regions represented by the school's student body. Students study the traditions of each country in that region, represent those throughout their school day. Parents and teachers, quote, parents and teachers work together to help the children dress and adopt local traditions, says 3rd grade teacher Stephanie Golder. She continues, we hope that this will have a positive impact on how students interact as they get older. When asked how they liked the program, one student from Vietnam replied, "Me gusto mucho." So that is that is Culture Club, and that's our 3rd one. Again, thank you, Rita. I'm sorry if there was any confusion there. But Jackie, you're going to go ahead and open the voting. You're going to vote on WebEx. For those of you who are listening in here, you're going to vote for Babies and Bars, Baby Pacifier, or Culture Club. Which one do you think is actually the truth? So we're going to jump into today's early childhood topic. I do want to start with an important announcement that actually, let me also mention that you can actually tweet us on Twitter, of course, at #ETTNOV, ETT or you can also tweet the early childhood education, which is, again, #ECE, #ECE. So thank you, and please do, if you have any questions or you want to make any comments, please keep that in mind, and I'll remind you again later. So the topic today, one of the items that Suzanne brought up as we were just getting prepared for the show is how perfect the timing of this show is. And what we saw today was the introduction by Senator Tom Harkin, George Miller, as well as Richard Hanna. Those 3 senators introduced an Early Childhood Education Improvement Act of 2013. I know there's another formal name for it, but the bill then describes a 10-year initiative to improve education for children from birth through their 5th year. It would create a new federal-state formula for grants to fund the expansion of preschool for poor 4-year-olds. States would then funnel that money down to various entities ranging from school districts, charter schools, to childcare centers, and Head Start programs that they can demonstrate are high-quality local providers. So I know we're going to get into a conversation about that as part of today's discussion. So let's go ahead and get started. Jenifer, Rita, Suzanne, thanks for participating, and tell us your thoughts about early childhood education and what issues people should be paying attention to.
This is Rita. One of the areas that I think that all should understand for early childhood is we are looking at how can we close the achievement gap for our children in the K through 12 system. And research has shown that we need to begin with our youngest learners, and those are our 3- and 4-year-olds. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of dollars going out to 3- and 4-year-olds for full access to preschool. And so not everybody understands how important early ed is, and the pre-literacy, the pre-math, but most importantly, the social-emotional skills, the structure and routine, all the different pieces that early education provides children to be school-ready. And so because of that, we don't see the dollars that we need in early education to provide the high-quality programs, and most importantly, provide equal access to all parents to have an early education for their children.
That's great, Rita. Thank you. Suzanne, what do you think the implications of this new bill are for addressing the points that Rita just brought up?
Well, I think that, we've talked time and time again about the fragmentation across that whole early education and care environment, regardless of whether it's at the state or the local or the federal level. There are many you know, there are subsidies for child care that are income-driven. There's always Head Start, but we're really not going to realize the potential for young children unless they have quality programs. And part of that fragmentation limits the effectiveness of many programs in achieving what society expects of us. So we also don't really have clear data on what the minimum inputs that are required for high quality and effective programs. We have variability across state standards for pre-K. They're inconsistent, especially in the areas of what's required for teacher qualifications and ratios. So if we're ever going to expect to have you know, a program that's well-funded, we need to be sure that beyond the health and safety issues of the environment, we have consistency in teacher qualifications, the teacher-child ratio, the idea that assessment is linked to children's experiences, that children receive individualized, child-centered, and personalized instruction, that we support and respect children's diverse cultural and language backgrounds, and that we continue, like Rita says, to try to connect and foster strong relationships with families, realizing that families have the responsibility for children more time during the day and far longer over the lifetime of that particular child. So I'm hopeful that this new act that's being introduced, A Strong Start for America's Children, is really going to begin to weave together more of those disparate pieces of the pie. So in addition to increasing the birth to 3 enrollment figures, they're going to work with the states to coordinate efforts better across state, local, and federal funds that are given out through the states to weave it into a more seamless tapestry that we can certainly rally around that idea.
That sounds great. Jenifer, do you have any thoughts about this as well? And then I actually want to go to one of the questions from one of our, yeah, go ahead.
Well, actually, I think it's really important to remember with regards to this bill and to support everything that Rita and Suzanne have spoken about is that you know, there have been studies that show that there's a tremendous return on investment in early childhood education. I think they you know, have found that for every dollar spent in early childhood education, there's about a $7 return back to society. Which we don't find in after-school programs or before-school programs, camps, and so forth. And I think it's really an important investment that if this bill is making in this part of our community and our society.
Well, I could certainly take us down a dead-end conversation here about the willingness of our society to invest in the future. But we won't go there, and certainly hope that this initiative will help move us ahead. One of our listeners, Rita Oates, actually, asked the question. She found it interesting that in Honduras and Jamaica, schooling starts at age 3. She's visited schools in both countries in the last few years, and presumably found that was, you know, the direction that we're headed. So, any thoughts about just starting school earlier?
I think, yeah, with Early Head Start, you know, they enroll pregnant mothers, and then once the children are born, the infants are also enrolled in a program, and they get a tremendous amount of support. One of the issues, though, Michael, as we've talked before, is that only 5% of all eligible poor women and children have slots in that program. You know, and Head Start itself only can enroll about 1.1 million children, families, and pregnant mothers.
So you're saying that there are 20 times that should be served by that program?
Right, who meet
Absolutely.
eligibility requirements. So it's not that, you know, it's just that we don't, it just doesn't appear that at this point we have the will for that. We realize, we know that it's the right thing to do.
There are certain state initiatives. I just saw an article in the New York Times with regards to Oklahoma and their preschool initiative where children are starting school at age 3.
I agree. I really believe we should be a preschool through 16 rather than just K through 12. It should be a preschool through 16 where we're looking at what we need to do to fund early education and moving all the way through beyond high school. And being a director the past 13 years and watching children come through our doors, having early interventions for students. We ran inclusion programs where we had typically developing children along with those who had special needs. And for children who were receiving the additional resources, who then did not end up in special education in kinder because they needed additional interventions in the area of speech therapy or occupational therapy, physical therapy, whatever the case may be, along with maybe they were behind cognitively. Receiving these early interventions, we were able to send children to kindergarten with just resource rather than a special day class. Now, if you want to look about the dollars entering into special education that you need to do for an SDC class, a special day class, rather than just resource, tremendous. So if we're able to provide those early interventions, so the first introduction to school is preschool, and providing those supports to those children's needs, especially when we're talking about families right now, as we were mentioning, those in early Head Start or Head Start. Those families are those who are below the poverty level here in California, for example, and lots of times they may be seen as needing some different supports or resources. It may just be the environments that they have been in prior to coming to school and just needing those rich through not only academic but welcoming environments that provide the resources the children need. So doing that gives our children, talk about Head Start, it gives them a head start. They're not entering kindergarten behind the 8 ball.
Well, it sounds like truth in naming. That's perfect. Head Start, giving kids a head start. I'm going to stop us for a moment here. We're going to continue this conversation with some additional data that came out of the panel that both Suzanne and I participated in a couple of weeks ago. But I want to turn first to the fact that we try to act on our conversation points, and we've given an opportunity for each one of our guests today to make a contribution. We'll make the contribution. They select the project as part of Donors Choose. So I'm going to ask each one of you to say something about the project you selected and why you selected it, and maybe others will contribute there or at least increase awareness. So let's start with you, Rita. Rita?
Yes. Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
I can hear you now.
Okay. Something that is particular to me, I just mentioned inclusion and working with children with autism in the past. It's really something that pulls my heartstrings. So the area that I looked at was autism, and there was a particular class, Mrs. Trujillo's class, at Commonwealth Avenue in E-School in LA. And what she really needed in her classroom was to meet the children's sensory needs. And so she needs resources and materials that will assist her in the classroom to help children self-soothe themselves. And she was just lacking a lot of those materials in the area of sensory needs. So I thought that would be a wonderful area to provide dollars towards so that she can help her children. And she had an array of ages in her classroom, and so just those extra materials and resources to help children self-soothe and regulate in order to teach them was something that I believe is a necessity. So that's where I chose that.
That's great. And that project is, again, at Donors Choose. It's called Meet My Sensory Needs. So let's go to you, Suzanne. Suzanne, you selected Fiction Author Studies.
Well, that was about my last opportunity because the other couple I had chosen, the time frame had already run out. But this one was really great because it really dovetails with the idea of baby pacifier. And at Woodburn Elementary School in the kindergarten class, there are a number of children who are from low-income homes, and they are dual language learners. And their teacher is very interested in getting them to want to read and learn to read. And the interesting part about her effort, it's not just getting books, but it's getting traditional fairy tales that are kind of paired with the other perspective within the book. For example, there's the story book of Red Riding Hood, but then there's the story of Little Red Riding Hood told by the wolf. So it's all about helping children understand, you know, that in many situations there are at least two sides of any story, and being able to pair up these books and help children from other language backgrounds and other cultures learn perspective taking is really, from my perspective, challenging for children from other language backgrounds, but it also challenges the teacher to help children understand this social-emotional component of storybooks and narratives as well. So I was excited to pick that.
And, you know, I want to point out, actually, another note. Boy, the rest of you need to catch up with Rita Oates here. She's noted to, she sent us a note saying that it is National Young Readers Week this week. So, Suzanne, yet another reason why it's perfect.
Wow.
So, nice project.
Harmonic convergence.
Yes, it is. So, Jenifer, let's go to yours, Playground Canopy.
Yeah, well, you know, in keeping with the sentiment of the webinar, I chose a project that the goals are to nurture the physical and social development of pre-K and special needs students at the Thomas H. Dudley School in Camden. They're looking, they have a playground for the young students, pre-K and the special needs, about 6 classes, and they have no shade around on the playground for them. And her students are 3 and 4 years old, and they're minority, racial, ethnic minorities in a community, and it's a community that's labeled one of the most dangerous in the country, Camden, New Jersey. And she really believes that these students are deserving of you know, the best educational resources. And you know, she's looking to help them develop their gross motor skills and get them out on the playground as much as possible, but they can't use it that often because of if there's been terrible weather or it's very hot, and I've been to the school, and there's no shade at all anywhere on the playgrounds, macadam playground. So she has 4 pre-K classes, 4 kindergarten classes, and several special needs classes that use this playground only, and they would love to have this canopy to help them use it more often.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you again for selecting that. And thank you, all 3 of you, for selecting clearly projects that can use the support. The support, again, I'll just remind everybody, MCH Strategic Data is our sponsor. They also are the group that contributes the $50 to each one of these projects as a thank you to each one of our guests for participating. So, again, thank you, and thank you to MCH for that sponsorship. I want to remind everybody that that you can find us on Twitter. It's EdTableTalk, and again, hashtag ETTNovember, ETTNOV, and also hashtag ECE for Early Childhood Education. And that hashtag is for early childhood education anywhere, so feel free to use that anytime, of course. Let's go back into our topic here, and that is, again, looking at early childhood early childhood education, are we really supporting kids in meeting their potential? We're going to look at a little bit of data around this, and I know we'll continue with that conversation. So one of the things that came up is this issue of fragmentation in the marketplace. Does anybody want to speak to some of these pieces around the fragmentation and the issues that it causes?
Well, I think that does speak, Michael, to the fact of
and that's Suzanne, yep.
Yeah, just the variability of quality across any given early childhood centers, you know, even in the same location, unless they're all with the same, like, school district or funding entity, then it's almost like local prerogative is informed by the funding sources, and that's certainly also true when the funding is only, you know, parent tuition and it doesn't include any child care subsidies or Head Start. And then when the states have variable, across states, they have variable standards and licensing, then that also promotes this differing quality standards.
Right, and Suzanne, I'd like to speak to something that you mentioned earlier in the webinar, just the fragmentation of teacher preparedness, and professional development is really a critical piece, and it's just broken down by the teaching schools and the states and the counties, and there's a real disparate skill out there, and like you said earlier, from school to school, even within a district.
And Rita, you must have certainly seen the impact of a number of these issues in terms of your daily work. Oh, did we lose Rita? It looks like Rita's not on the line anymore. I'm sure she'll come back in again. We'll make sure we get her back. So clearly fragmentation is an issue. Again, hopefully this bill will help bring some of that together. You know, never underestimate bureaucracy, but it certainly seems like it's the intention. Is that the case? Jenifer, Suzanne?
I think so. I think it's a wonderful step forward. I'm a little leery in the bureaucracy that you mentioned, just because New Jersey has had the experience with the Abbott districts, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with that and what that had been.
No, say more.
Well, there was a law passed in the state of New Jersey that pulled funding from the wealthier districts into what were considered the Abbott districts, and they were the lowest income areas in New Jersey: Camden, Trenton, Jersey City, Elizabeth. And the money was funneled into the early learning centers in these districts without really a lot of oversight, and it was a tremendously well-intentioned law, but there was quite a bit of abuse and within that. Suzanne, are you familiar with the
Yes, I am yeah. Quite a bit, because the judges' mandates then have raised the quality of those child care programs so consistently in New Jersey that it's almost become, you know, a bellwether state for early childhood, along with, as you mentioned before, Jenifer, Oklahoma being on the forefront of that, and I think one of the neighboring states, Connecticut, as well, being leaders in the area of promoting professional development. And there's also a lot of quality improvement rating systems that have gotten quite a bit of traction, and I suspect that with this new act and the proposals that includes, that those will also gain more consistency about, you know, what are the competencies we want for those teachers and caregivers who spend so much time with our youngest children, especially when we acknowledge, you know, the brain development that is so phenomenal at those early stages.
Absolutely. It sets the stage for their future.
We mentioning the quality, this is Rita, mentioning the quality rating systems, we do have that here in San Diego. In the initiative that I'm working on, we do have a QRIS system that not only is our state receiving the federal dollars to start working on that quality rating systems that they've been implementing these last 2 years, but we've been in an initiative for the past 8 years doing just that. And so in the programs that I'm working with in the professional development is we do have a rating system that we go in and rate the programs, and then in the areas that they need improvement on, that's where the professional development with teachers and staff, we have coaches from the County Office of Ed going into classrooms providing the one-on-one coaching as well as our group sessions. So we go down to the teacher level as well as we are working with administration. That's my focus. But we are looking at just that, and what does it take above and beyond the subsidies that you're receiving, whether it's federal or state subsidies or local subsidies, what does it take to provide a high-quality program across your state or across the nation? What is it? What does it take? How do we do that? So we've been working on that for the past 8 years.
Well, thank you so much for that input, Rita. That's great. Well, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. And take a look at the spending on academic materials sort of year over year, and looking at state expenditures, Head Start, and private, and other sources. Any insights about the sort of shifts that we see taking place? Is any part of that because of sequester or other funds going, and what implications do you see this this initiative having? Anybody?
Well, this is truly not enough dollars. If we're talking about providing quality instruction for our children in the classroom, you need the materials and supplies and the resources to provide just that. And in early education, we know that our children learn through hands-on activities, through interaction. So this is very little dollars in order to provide the materials and supplies that you need to provide a quality instruction.
Let's go to the next slide, which I think breaks out these materials in a little bit different way. And so this helps us look at, core curricular materials, supplemental, assessment-related, and then digital. Again, looking at year over year. Any one of the three of you maybe can reflect on this data.
Well, I think that looking at the assessments, both print and digital, with the move for increasing the effectiveness of early education, we continue to focus on child outcomes and child standards and frameworks that articulate in what we hope to be clear ways what we want children to be able to know and do by the time, they're like entering kindergarten or first grade, that whole school readiness aspect and what our expectations are. So I'm guessing that assessments and both print and digital will continue to be, a significant part of the materials that teachers are expected to use, and use in a formative sense so that they actually do inform their the instruction and the learning experiences that teachers create for children.
Jenifer, Rita?
The other piece, as you mentioned when we were talking about the donor's choice, just the basic needs and necessities in the classrooms, as we were talking about just the shade structure or canopy needed outside, those are thousands and thousands of dollars that it takes just to purchase basic health and safety things that you need in a classroom. So our youngest children, these are 3- and 4-year-olds, and to keep and maintain licensing regulations, dependent upon where you are in the state, just to keep those, your facilities and your environment safe, and your facilities up to par, and then all the materials that you need within there to maintain safe environments. It's clearly not enough dollars, and you see it's declining, And we need to not only meet the basic needs, which is licensing and health and safety, then once the children are safe in their environment, we need to provide those instructional opportunities to get them ready for kinder. So more dollars need to be shifted, obviously, in these areas.
Perfect. And the data that we've been looking at here, these charts also have come from MCH's partner, Simba Information. So we thank them for providing this information. Did you want to chime in, Jenifer?
No, I was just going to agree with Rita. I think it's important that you know, that the states, the districts, they all work with one another to be able to provide those basic necessities for you know, the schools absolutely need those. Yeah.
Right. I mean, as I certainly knew as a teacher, a lot of what kids were engaging with had nothing to do with the content or learning. There are a lot of other items on Maslow's hierarchy that we have to grapple with, and often those are unfunded and really do need our support. Let's move to the next slide, looking at child and family demographics around Head Start programs. And Suzanne, this is a slide that you provided to us from Education Turnkey. Want to tell us a little bit about this demographic?
Well, every year, all of the Head Start programs and early Head Start programs are required to provide data to the federal government. These data are from 2012, and they are basic demographic information about the ethnicity, languages, background of both children enrolled and families in the program, as well as staff. And when we talked about, you know, 3-year-olds, you can see from this chart that about a third of the 1.142 million children in Head Start are 3 years old. And of course, the vast majority are 4 years old, 48%, and 2% are about 5 years old. And then the rest are the early Head Start enrollees, which would include children up to age 3 and then pregnant mothers. Often we think that Head Start only enrolls children who meet the poverty guidelines, but actually if children have a disability, they also may apply to be enrolled in Head Start programs. And there are 12% of children in Head Start who have disabilities. In early Head Start, it's 13%. And there are, in some cases, children with disabilities may not meet the poverty guidelines, but they may be what they call over-income.
Great. I'm going to move us past actually the next slide to this issue about implementing an approach to school readiness. Rita, I think you alluded to some variation of this, really about this process of continuous improvement and feedback in the process. How does this relate to what you're doing?
Well, it's timing. I just yesterday provided professional development with all of our directors, and we were looking at just that we need to not only drive instruction via data that we receive, but we also need to use that data to drive our programs. And so, as both Suzanne and Jenifer mentioned, professional development is key, and we need to take a look at the not only formal but formal assessments that we have in the classrooms, the parent surveys, the environmental scales, the instructional, the class tool, and take a look at all of this data and look and see what it's telling us. And not only do we need to use that data currently to drive the instruction in the classrooms, but we need to take that data for the following year to drive our professional development for our teachers. Our teachers is where it's at, and we need to make sure that our teachers are ready for all children that come through their classrooms. And so I think data, it does definitely, as you're looking at this graphic, it does need to determine the priorities and definitely where you need to put your resources and materials to improve your efforts. So very reflective of what we're doing.
Perfect. And, you know, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael. Oh, I was just going to say one thing. I don't know what it's like for you, Rita, or your experiences, Jenifer, but in Head Start, by and large, with respect to the teachers and the practitioners in the classroom, we seem to be overachieving in our abilities to collect the data. It's just some of the other pieces of the process. You know, using the data, analyzing it, and then sharing results. As you said, Rita, you're busy, you know, sort of continuing the feedback loop, so then the next year you're going to be informed through your data collection of what kinds of needs you have for professional development. A lot of times in Head Starts, when we ask teachers, well, you know, you've finished using the curriculum assessment, you've collected it from all your children, now what do you do with it? Well, we send it to the office. And so that kind of leaves you like, oh. So
right.
you spent a lot of time, you know.
That's where, you know, the directors come into play as we have this conversation about accountability and monitoring. And that's where the piece is, long gone are the days that you just check off that you've managed a requirement. Really, it's understanding the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? Why are we collecting it? And what is the data telling us? And so if your teachers are stating that, then we need to take them back to the drawing board and say, okay, why are you doing what you're doing? And how can this help you modify your instruction and drive your instruction on a day-to-day? And we were talking about that individualization. Well, how can you individualize if you don't have the information to do that? And how can you differentiate your instruction if you don't have the information to do it? So we spend a lot of time collecting data, but long as, you know, we don't need to collect data to count widgets. We need to just collect data to drive instruction and drive programs. And so that's where our efforts start right now is to say, what does this all mean? And what can we do with it?
And then taking it one step further, you know, as the director with this data and determining what they need to do in the classroom, how do you develop those teachers to use that data and help them improve their skills to help those students, right? So one step further in the professional development of those teachers and individualizing their education. How do you help a teacher learn to teach?
Right. I hate to put an end to the conversation. Time is ticking away, but I know that, you know, this is going to be an ongoing discussion. I do want to remind all of our listeners and invite our guests as well. January 14th, we do have a program, which, as I mentioned before, is about making assessment actionable with the subtitle, "Don't Tell Us They're Doing Poorly, Help Us Do Something About It." So I think that's exactly the kind of item that you were discussing, Rita, and I think all of you agreed with. Let me go to concluding thoughts. If you can keep it to 30 seconds, if you had to leave the listeners with one thought, what would you leave them with? Let's go, Jenifer.
Are we doing what can we do to prepare all children is to help the teachers realize their potential so that they can help the students.
Rita?
We do need to provide quality instruction for all students beginning in preschool through 16, but we need to provide the resources and materials in order to do that. And so we need to take a look at that as a nation on how we're going to do that.
And this is Suzanne. I want to continue to work on in parent and family engagement and trying to help parents truly understand and make actionable that they are an important and even the most important piece of the puzzle in promoting future success for their children at school and in life.
Perfect. Thank you to all three of our guests. I really appreciate the discussion, and hopefully we've incited those who have been listening to dig deeper and hopefully learn even more about this topic. Let's go ahead and go to looking at upcoming conferences. We actually selected, with the help of our guests, 4 conferences that are directly related to this topic. And so let's go to discuss NAEYC. I think, Jenifer, you were going to lead that for us?
Sure. NAEYC is just an exciting, wonderful conference for teachers, administrators, school leaders. It's a behemoth. It's huge. It's learning opportunities for everyone involved in the education of young children. And I would recommend that anyone going take a look at the program before heading down to Washington, D.C., because there's so much offered, it's just overwhelming. And not to miss the expo. There's just so many resources there for everyone.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Let's go, Rita, to you for 0 to 3's National Training Institute Conference.
This is a great conference to kind of discuss what we were just talking about, is looking at our earliest learners and looking at the research and the data that that feeds instruction for 0 to 3, and looking at children with special needs, and just providing that information and the research and quality best practices. It's a great conference to gain that knowledge.
Perfect. And then, Suzanne, you're going to have these last two. One is Head Start Birth to 3, and the other one is the Head Start National Research Conference on Early Childhood. Tell us about those.
The Head Start Birth to 3 conference is going to be here in D.C., and it's going to be in June, and I think as soon as they sign the contracts with the hotel, we'll get information on registration. This conference has a similar target audience to the one that Rita just discussed, except it would focus a little bit more on Head Start and early Head Start programs. And then the Head Start National Research Conference, that happens every other year, and this is the opportunity for the Office of Program Research and Evaluation to get all of their university partners who have been involved in identifying evidence-based practices together to report on the results of their research studies. So they may have information about effective curriculum options for children and effective professional development strategies as well. But those are both, coming up in early 2014.
Well, there you go. Thank you so much for that. This is quite the set of conferences, and I think that anybody who's interested in this topic would find certainly a lot of information there. Let's go to our closing segment here on You Can't Handle the Truth. Our results are in. Before we expose those, let's go ahead and talk amongst yourselves. Which one do you think is true? Jenifer, Rita, Suzanne?
I think the baby pacifier is true.
Jennifer, Rita?
I was torn between baby and culture, baby pacifier and culture club.
This is Rita. I think culture club is true.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and open up the poll so we can see what the results were. Is that open? Oh, here it is. Thank you. And so most people thought, true enough, they thought it was culture club. Well, in fact, the real answer is baby pacifier. Baby pacifier. So, in fact, putting babies into schools with young kids, they can, grow emotionally and appreciate it. It turns out having long-term impact. But it's always fun writing these, and if you have any ideas for a particular topic, I know we'll have some fun with the assessment items. And thank you, everybody who voted, and again, thank you to our guests for reading those. Let's go next to thanking, again, MCH for their sponsorship for the show, and really appreciate all those who provided data, and particularly, again, thank you to our guests. Thank you to Rita and Suzanne, as well as, I'm really flummoxing here. Here we go. Rita, Suzanne, and Jenifer. For participating in today's show. I think this is great. We're going to end with a very quick segment on what would you tell, this is part of, again, what would you tell an educator who is interested in a career in early childhood education? We'll hear their answers to that in just a moment. Our next show is January 14th, again, on actionable, making assessment actionable. So on our way out, go ahead. Jenifer, tell us how you would answer that question. What would you tell an educator who's interested in career and early childhood education?
That it's fabulously rewarding to read a lot of Piaget and to volunteer in all types of centers, you know, early on.
Wonderful. And Rita?
I would agree that it's a very rewarding and noble profession. You work with children and they put a smile on your face. They're so cute and so much fun to work with. I would, though, tell the truth that you will definitely not become rich in early ed. It is an area for teachers in early education that probably are least paying teachers, even though they're working with our most critical age with students who communicate the least. Unfortunately, they're not paid what we believe they should be paid in, but it's definitely a rewarding and wonderful profession.
And Suzanne, a quick comment before our time's up.
Well, I just want to be a little snarky, sort of segueing from Rita's comment about not becoming rich. I suggest that you move to Finland or the Scandinavian countries because they really value the education of young children there, and they actually respect teachers and they pay them a worthy wage. If you don't want to move, you might want to consider finding a philanthropist somewhere who wants to support you in the style to which you're accustomed. And other than that, the truth is, it is really exciting to go into a classroom every day and to sort of be in an experimental mode where you can watch and really understand how children's brains are developing and, you know, what they're thinking and see them connecting the dots. And that is really rewarding, and I do it again.
Wonderful. Thank you again to all three guests. I do want to tell people, if you're going to be at NAEYC on Friday, the 22nd of November, there at 8 a.m., there's an early childhood market forecast for 2004 challenges and opportunities, and that is from MCH, Strategic Data. And thank you again for joining Ed Table Talk. We'll talk to you in January. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
Michael.
you.
Thank
you.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Rita. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.